We've all learned that the yang side is the right side and the yin side is the left side. Okay, so I've got news for you. We see it exactly the opposite. This is the chi side, the left side is the chi side, which means it's yang. And the right side is the blood side. Okay. Which means I also needle from the left to the right because you move the chi before you move the blood. It's just the nature of it. You don't want to move the blood before you move the chi. Why? Because yin channels, what do they do? Okay, if you look at the body this way, all the yin channels move from the earth, which is yin, towards higher. Okay? Pericardium, heart, lung, they all move that way, they're moving upwards. Spleen, kidney, liver, they're moving upwards. Okay, it makes sense. I know there's this understanding, what is yang moves up. Okay, but in the yin channel, the yin channels move up. The yang channel is the opposite. They move down. They come from heaven. They originate in heaven. Yes, you could also say the opposite, that yang is reaching out to heaven. Okay? But actually, it's in the human body. The person is between heaven and earth. We communicate between the two. We communicate the yin to the yang to the yin. So in the body. Now, where in the body do you have something that moves up and down? Is in the intestines. Okay? So in the intestines, we're seeing that in the right side, there's a movement up. Okay? Therefore, it's yin. The right side becomes yin. The descending colon's on the left. And it's the yang that descends. I know it's counterintuitive for, if you've been like in TCM ideology for a long time. So therefore we say left side is chi, right side is blood. Okay? So it's just a concept because we talked about that before. Okay? So let's actually start. All right. So, and actually we cut, those of you who weren't here when, we talked about what happens when a patient has nothing. So, they have symptoms, but they're not, you can't figure out what's happening. So yes, this is a system, I'm going to give you ideas of how to treat people and some dogmas and some protocols. But you have to accept the fact that like any other system, people show, if somebody comes with, say, high blood pressure, they may show behind the occiput, but they may not. And actually that happens to be said so on the notes. But just because somebody shows below kidney 16, it is not, they are an adrenal category for us, but it doesn't mean that someone without it can't be adrenal. You may derive that they're adrenal through other means. So you still have to find a treatment, even though the dogma may not lead you there. Okay? So I'm going to try in the next hour and a half give you as much dogma as possible, so that you get the basics. And then we'll stop playing, because it's when we play that we really start to understand. Okay? Because just the dogma doesn't mean, it's cute, but but don't get married to what I'm saying. Okay? So. I don't know if you all got this handout, or I tried to email. Are you? Oh, you didn't get my emails?
No.
Okay. You use a different email than you use on your PayPal account.
It's the same one. Did you send out that?
I did. I sent you the link to it. Well, I'll give it to you. Don't worry. No big deal. So. This style is known for what most people think of this style is you palpate abdomen and you resolve reflexes. That's kind of like the thing that people are associated with this style. I'm going to suggest that that's not totally true. Okay? So, and because first of all, I want you to know that my grandfather teacher, meaning my teacher's teacher, did not really palpate abdomen. Okay, he did everything straight out of the balls. Okay, so I don't care how you derive your information. I'm going to show you how to derive the information from palpation, but you can do it by other means. If you can do it by looking at people's fingernails, or you can do it, if you can do it from the tongue, that's okay. The only problem with tongues is they don't change fast enough, so you can't confirm. Okay, so it's the confirmation that's the landmark of the style. not the palpation. Palpation is what gives us something by which we can confirm. So what happens is it looks like I'm palpating abdomen and neck, and then I'm pressing on remote points and I'm ensuring that the abdomen got better. Why? Because if you go into like your TCM style, and you say, okay, well, this is spleen Qi deficiency, I'll do spleen 6 and stomach 36, and I don't know what else you do, large cystic, I don't know, whatever you do for spleen Qi deficiency diagnosis. How do you confirm that your points are correct, that your combination is good? You don't, as far as I recall. I mean, it's been a long time since I was in TCM school, but my recollection, there's no confirmation whatsoever until the patient comes back in the next week. Okay. Now, there is a little, some people, if you're really good with pulses, you might say, oh, well, I think the pulse is stronger, or whatever, but nobody looks at the tongue and says, well, now those spleen Qi deficient tooth marks, what are they called, scalloped tongue, now the tongue is not scalloped. It's impossible, right? So tongue is not a good indicator for something you want to see right away. Okay? And with acupuncture, I want a confirmation right away. I want to see, can I affect it? Because I can't go back. It's like, what's the point? If I wait till next week and they say, well, by the way, that treatment sucked. Okay, well, they may call to cancel before they come back and tell you the treatment sucked. So it's important that you do the best you can to confirm your points rather than have it theoretical. So the abdominal findings, if nothing else, supply you a way to know that point is working. Because if it's changing something, if you're pressing, if you want to press on stomach 36, that's fine with me. Press on stomach 36, does the abdomen change? Wow, it changes. That's a good point. It really is spleen Qi deficient. Because the reality is that we're coming up with diagnoses which are just stories. Okay? The story may conform to the either last 100 years or the last 2,000 years of texts that tell us this, yes, you're correct, it really is spleen Qi deficient according to all the signs and symptoms. How many of you have seen people that have rapid pulses, strong rapid pulses, and have absolutely no fever and no other heat signs? Happens all the time. How many of you have seen slow pulses, weak, slow pulses? I don't know, what's a young deficient pulse? Weak, slow, something else? Sunken, okay, whatever the words we have around it, The pulse is young deficient, the person's clearly they're red, they're hot, they're blah, 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 whatever. It's not my way of diagnosing, I don't do the TCM method of diagnosing, but it's clear that they are not young deficient, and yet some of the signs will be like that because people don't come as a whole package. That's why when you're listening to this, you have to, be flexible, okay? So by pressing on the abdomen, what I gave myself is an option of testing out my idea. When I have a diagnosis, for me, a diagnosis is just an idea. Okay? Now, many people here studied with Robert Johns. Okay? So with Robert Johns, it was correct diagnosis leading to correct treatment principle leading to whatever, something else, to actual needling and then technique or something like that. But for me, there's no such thing as correct diagnosis until you test it. Okay? So the abdominal findings allow me to confirm my diagnosis. They also allow me to reach a diagnosis to some extent, or to a large extent. Okay? But we actually start with a medical history. Okay? So the first principle for me of this style is to get the medical history. And most TCM type people don't know the Western medical history. Now, I speak a lot more Westernese than I do Chinese. Okay? And the reason why is because if Chinese medicine is a philosophical medicine, it shouldn't matter. Okay? If you're saying spleen dampness, okay, and we have translated it, we are assuming that spleen dampness means we understand what it meant to the Chinese, who really probably did know, imagine walking in rice fields, they're wet. They know what dampness is. We probably don't. Okay, where most of us don't live in the right environments to really understand that. But we can sort of understand it's something that's heavy, that lingers, you know, so we can say, you know, for example, some depressions will be split, you know, you can say it's a dampness. Okay, it's hard for the person to like get out. Okay, if you're sinking in a swamp, you know you've got to like push yourself the hell out, and yet you don't have the motivation to do it. Okay, so that corresponds to the idea of spleen dampness. But I can also say depression, and I said the same thing, except everybody understands exactly what I said. And if I say spleen dampness, people are going to go, oh, really? Is that like malaria? You know, because it's like spleen dampness doesn't mean anything in our culture. It's a bad way to communicate. So if we're communicating amongst ourselves and we all believe that we speak TCMEs, that's okay. But if we want to communicate with other people, and we really should be wanting to communicate with other people, it becomes a lot more complicated, you know, to speak these Chinese terms. That's why I tend to speak things like hyperthyroid, hypothyroid, cardiac conditions. It's, you know, the Chinese terms don't really, I'm not interested so much in the Chinese terms. And yet, when it comes to imagery of, say, why is the point working, I am very interested in what is the name of the point, and, you know, stuff of that nature. Okay, so don't throw away the TCM stuff, but don't overly latch onto it like you should. You know, I think it's good to speak other languages. So I'm looking at the medical history because most patients who come to us don't come to us the first day that an injury happened. Okay, it's rare. You will have one or two very loyal people who like think Chinese medicine is the first line of defense, but the majority of patients come and they say, I had this problem for 3 years now, or at least 3 months. You know, that's the standard. They don't come before 3 months as a whole. Okay, then you have to say to yourself, why do you still have this? Okay, you banged your elbow, I understand it hurts for a few days, say a week. But 3 months later, there's a reason why this is not healing. Okay? You have to look at what's holding this person from healing. What is the root of, so the elbow to me is possible, not always, but you know, likely the manifestation of another weakness. Yes, they banged the elbow, that is the cause. But the reason why this cause is not going away is because the body is not able to just kind of keep going. And that's what I have to look at, because if I just treat the elbow, if somebody comes to you and said, I hit my elbow yesterday, can you do something about it? Often the answer is actually no. But assuming, oh, you know, you can cup, you can move qi and blood very strongly about whatever it is that one does for these things. But if it happened yesterday, you can just treat it. You can just treat the elbow and hope for the best. We always hope for the best. There's never a guarantee. But if it happened 3 months ago and all you're doing is treating the elbow, in whatever ideology you have, you know, mirroring with Richard Tan or equivalent channel of this or, you know, whatever. We have some of those also. Metal water is like a big thing. Which channel? Okay, let's use metal water and see if it gets better. Everybody's got some trick. If you just use tricks for the elbow, because you haven't treated the underlying weakness, there's a good chance that it will come back. So it will look good for a moment or for a few hours, but then it's already latched onto the weakness in the body and you haven't addressed it, so you want to treat that weakness. Okay? So that's why I'm looking for the medical history. What is weak in your system that you're already aware of? Okay? So I want to be able to gather that. Then I palpate abdomen. When I say palpate abdomen, it actually means abdomen plus neck. Okay? The back, generally I tend to do afterwards. I usually don't palpate the back on a person right off the bat. I do the front treatment first, then I turn them over. The next step is what I call correlate and prioritize. Okay? So I correlate the information that I got from palpating. And this is the palpation is the part that everybody's concerned with. We want the map of the abdomen. We want to know what this means. We want to know what this means. We want to know what this means, of course. And then we also want to know what the solution is. Okay? So the majority of the class is going to look like about that, but it isn't. Okay? And I really want you to remember that. So I took the information I got from the abdomen, and I took the information I got from the medical history, and I put them together, and now I come up with a story. Your elbow is not healing because, oh, it's your mother's heart condition. I'm just making stuff up. It doesn't mean it's real. Or you have hypothyroidism, or whatever. I'm coming up with some story that I believe explains why this is hanging on. Now I'm testing that theory. In other words, now, if I came up with a story, I am not a Western doctor. That, there are some doctors that are just diagnosticians. You go to them and they say, okay, your lab tests show you have yak-yak-yitis. Okay? And then you say, okay, what do you do for yak-yak-yitis? And there's usually 3 common answers. One is, well, yak-yak-yitis is still untreatable. We hope that in the next 10 years we'll find a cure. Okay, well, that's really cute. I mean, who cares if I have yak-yak-yitis? It's nice information, but it's not helpful. Okay, that kind of diagnosis is useless to me. Okay. Next diagnosis is, well, I have Dr. Diagnostoshin. Okay, and as Dr. Diagnostoshin, I only diagnose. Okay, by my name, it's very clear. But my colleague 3 doors down treats yak-yak-titis. Please go to them and they'll give you the pill. Yak-yak-pilsis. And everything is fine. Okay, now, you may be one of those 50% or 60% or even 70% people that yak-yak-pilsis does not work. Okay, and then, no worries, we have 2nd layer, 3rd layer, 4th layer. And if you have certain side effects, well, we're very sorry. I'm making fun of the system, it's not fair. But just to exaggerate, the way this works. Okay, so, and the 3rd answer is, okay, here's the solution. I will schedule you for surgery next week. Okay, so, those are kind of like, either we don't know how to treat it, or I happen not to treat it, but I'm really good at diagnosing. This is my specialty. So radiologists, that's basically their job. They never see the patient. They see a film. They know what the complaint is. They have no idea what else is going on with the patient. And they have to match the complaint. And then you get the weirdest ideas from radiologists out there. But it's their job. No, it's not their fault. They're given that, there's some weird abnormality in the MRI, and they're, on C5, and therefore they go, okay, well, that will explain why your it may be totally normal for this person. Everybody now has mild arthritis everywhere. Well, because anybody over 40 is going to have something on their bones. It doesn't mean that's the problem. Okay? But the radiologist is basically, that's the contract they have. Show me a film, tell me the symptom, I will give you a correlation. Okay, and if I don't, I did a bad job. Now, you're the physician of this patient, and you do what the radiologist says. Now, it's your problem if it doesn't work. It's not the radiologist's problem, because it's really the physician who should be smart enough to kind of play around. So I'm being all those people as an acupuncturist, okay? So I come up with diagnoses only that I have a solution for. If I come up with a story, you have this because your grandmother had yak-yak-titis, and I have no idea how to treat yak-yak-titis, okay? I'm stuck. I have no needle. There's no reason for the person to come to me. I just became a diagnostician, and I told them a story that may be totally wrong to begin with. Okay? So if I come up with a story, it means I have some points in mind, or I can make up some points that will treat it. Making up points is totally acceptable. Okay? That means I can now test the point that I came up with. The diagnosis implied some point or some possibilities of points for me. I'm going to press on those points and see if the abdomen changed. That's why the abdomen is so important. Okay? Now, there are many people who teach this style literally. Like, if you have this, treat that. You found adrenal, treat kidney 6 and 27. Here are your substitutes for kidney 6. The problem, that was not a very good example because adrenal generally tends to be primary, but it may not be. It's even possible that it won't. I don't take one finding in the abdomen and treat it. I take the whole abdomen and treat it. That's why I need to, that's why I call the third step, not just making up a story, prioritizing what's most important here. Can I find a diagnosis? The person can have in the abdomen 5 different stories. I have adrenal below kidney 16, both sides. I have worry reflex, REN 15. I have anxiety reflex, REN 17. I have right stomach 26, 27. Like we'll call it immune just for the sake of it right now. I have left stomach 26, 27. We call it stagnant bladder. Well, you start having a lot of things. And I have a REN 9 pulse, which is a weak dantian. And by the way, I have all these fire points all over the body. And and my SCM is tight as hell. And you start having a lot. What are you going to do? You have to prioritize, because if you chase one after the other, you end up with 20 protocols. You do not want that. You want to find, can I find one protocol? This is a very idealized one. Up to 3. Okay, 3 ideas. Can I have one main idea with 2 maybe less important ideas that really solve 80-90% of the abdomen and affect the symptom? Okay. So sometimes people have criticized Kiiko. They would say, you're always checking the symptom, it's symptomatic acupuncture. No, we're checking if our root treatment, because in Japan the idea of root and branch is huge, and you should treat the root, you never treat the symptom, blah, blah, blah. It's stupid arguments. In my opinion, it's just arrogance. The patient doesn't know about the root and doesn't know about the branch, the patient knows about the symptom. Get my symptom better and get it stable. Don't get my symptoms and have it come back 6 hours later. They don't like that. Even if it looked good for 6 hours, they don't like that it comes back. Okay? That's why I'm treating the root. I'm not treating the root because I am superior. And I think it's important. The patient did not have a contract with me to change their destiny. The patient came with a contract saying, I have this symptom, fix it, but fix it long term. Okay? That's why I'm looking at the root. Okay? So, is my so-called root treatment, what I think is the root treatment, is it proven correct on the patient's body? Okay? If you chase after the abdomen, you'll never get to the root. You might by chance, but you also might not. So we're going to learn the protocols one by one in this is the solution for this, this is the solution for this, and then when we have a patient on the table, you may see that it all flips around. They have 3 different things in the abdomen, and I'm using maybe one of them, or I'm using something from the medical history, some idea that I have, and that treats the whole abdomen, and I never use the protocols for any of what they officially had, officially in the abdomen. Okay, does that make sense? So it's the dynamicism of the style that makes it difficult, but that's also what makes it exciting and effective. Okay? So, when we look at medical history, I'm looking really for what happened to the person from birth, also anything inherited, that what did you inherit from your parents, grandparents? I usually don't go much further unless it's obvious. So you have 6 people that you're looking for. Mother, father, and the 4 grandparents. Okay, so there's 6 people that contribute to you genetically. Okay? And then time-wise, I'm looking for the first injury. So obviously something inherited is before anything that happened to you. Okay? So if you fell on your head when you were 3, that will be very important because it can affect your whole pituitary hypothalamus axis, yes. But if you have diabetes in the family, and say you have it from both sides, and say you have 3, one grandfather, the other grandmother, and your father, okay, that's 3 people, but from 2 different branches, chances are diabetes is very important for your treatment, okay, even though you don't have it. Okay, same thing for, say, cardiac disorders. Certain things take priorities, like if you come with an autoimmune disorder, chances are autoimmune treatment is primary for you. Okay, it's in your medical history and it's very big. Things like thyroid, diabetes, autoimmune, blood pressure are primary. Why? Because they affect the metabolism of every single cell in your body. They're not like one symptom out there, okay? you know, as you know, diabetes causes a disintegration of everything else. Okay, it starts showing cardiac problems. They have high cholesterol. I mean, everything starts. The kidneys shut down. They eventually, you know, come up with gangrene. I mean, that's a little bit on the extreme side, but you know, the nerves don't work very well. So, you know, you can't ignore something like diabetes in the history. Okay, so someone who themselves has diabetes, it's obvious. They will get the diabetes treatment. Then I can add other things. You will notice later on that all these things that I mentioned as primary are going to involve the kidneys. Just as it happens, it's the way it is. Okay? So what I'm looking, when I'm hearing, I try not to hear the medical history, I try to read it. Okay? I ask the patient, and on my website you will see that, you know, if you go to the patient corner, there is a patient intake form, which I totally stole. No problem admitting it. You can steal it from me. It's not a problem either. Basically, there's nothing to steal there. I'm just asking, there's nothing on this form except give me a medical history, childhood, teenage, adult, and what diseases are in your family. Okay? And let them, what age it was, and in bullet form. Bullet form is important. If you talk to a patient about the medical history, it's worse than talking to me. Okay? You will end up 3 hours later not knowing anything. Okay, because it's like sitting in a coffee shop and yeah, you know, my grandmother had this mole and they removed it and my grandfather didn't like it and what the hell is it got to do with, you know, people love to talk about themselves. Okay, so if you talk about, if you're trying to get the medical history from talking, in my opinion, it's a lost cause. Okay, it's really good for them to write it down, for you to look at it and ask them questions about it. That's okay. It's not like you can't ask. But if you try to get them to tell you, well, when I was 6, was I 10? Sit at home, decide what age you are on, give it to me, give me the final result in chronological. That's why in today's world with the web, it's very easy. That's what all doctors do. Fill out the medical forms at home, come with them filled up. It's much better. Okay, it's not that I care about that 5 minutes that they're going to sit in the waiting room or wherever filling it out. It's just that it's confusing for them under pressure. It's better for them to fill it out. And then you're looking at it and you can say, okay, what do you mean by that? Okay, so you want to get the medical history. And we generally looking for what is the first injury that this body sustained? Can I still find a reflection of that in the body? If so, chances are that's what's holding the patient. Now that's a dogma. You may have to let go of this dogma totally. It may be the third injury in your life that's really the root. But that's how you start. Start with the first, move to the second, move to the third. That's why you have that fourth test of testing it out. Okay? Until you say, this is the main root, if you can. With the palpatory findings, palpate the whole abdomen, the neck, and the throat fully. Don't start resolving anything. I know sometimes it's very exciting. Oh, I know how to resolve this one. Or, you know, it's like, oh, it's so painful, let me get rid of it, or what. Get the whole picture first. Then make up a strategy. So don't start that when you're palpating as well as when you're listening to the medical history, listen very openly, hopefully without any judgment, without any reaction, without any, you know, it's very difficult to do because you're looking at medical history and I got you, this is it. You know, it's interesting to do that. But can you kind of keep an open mind? So, you know, Guan Yin is the patron of medicine, right? She's the goddess of medicine, or you know where she, Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva of compassion. That's where she came from the word Avalokiteshvara, and changed gender while she changed names. But you know, it's very fluid nowadays. She really didn't do anything yet nowadays. But anyway, Guan means to observe. Okay. Guan, by the way, is also in meditation. Chan is the word for meditation, which got translated into Japanese as Zen. Chan comes from the word jhana, okay, meditation. When the Chinese chose, because there's other words for meditation in Chinese, but when the Chinese chose to translate the word, chose the word Chan, which literally spells, when you look at the character, okay, differently. So Chan, jhana, you can see it's a little bit similar, okay. Chan means one ancestor. Okay? When you meditate, you understand that everything is related, everything has the same ancestor. Okay? That's the idea. Okay? Meditation is composed of two things. Well, in the Buddhist context at least. To stop the habitual mind. So in Tibetan it's shine, or in Sanskrit it's shamatha, meaning to calm the mind. You can't calm the mind without stopping the habits of the mind. Okay, so you stop, and the second part is guan. Okay, like guan yin, to observe, to look. Okay, I look at things to see what's going on. Okay, so that as a doctor, guan yin, and yin means the sound. Like any sound is yin. Okay, so to observe, her name is not to listen to the sound, her name is to observe the sounds. Okay? Observing sounds is the name of Guan Yin. So that's what we do in medicine. Okay? We're observing the sounds of the patient. You know, who is this person? We have to observe before we can treat, before we can respond. And one of the things that is said about Avalokiteshvara, about Guan Yin, is she sits and listens without judging or reacting. She just sits, and that is why she's the bodhisattva of compassion, because that gives people that sense of spaciousness. Okay, so it's true in terms of, you know, bedside manner, but it's also true technically about, I cannot take your medical history and go, I think it's this, and do the same thing with the abdomen. Hold your guns. Get all the information first, and that's okay. Like I said, I don't palpate the back. You know, when the patients come, I always treat the front first and then the back. Okay? That's me. Okay, that used to be Kiiko, that's not totally true anymore. Okay. So it's not so convenient for me to palpate the back. On the back, I'm interested primarily in the huato, in the Du channel and the huatos. There are some areas where I'm interested in other places, and I'll show you those, but primarily I'm interested in the huatos. I'm interested in the nervous system. Basically opening up the nervous system. Now, so the back I will do later, unless there's some big question going on and I'm trying to get more information from the back. Okay? And then we're not that big on channel palpation. This is not our specialty. We do some of them. We're looking for bumps, we're looking for varicosity, pain along the channel, yes. But we're not like big channel palpators. But we do check fire points. If there's pain on the fire point, we consider that to be inflammation in the channel. Somebody asked me, so if fire point means inflammation in the channel, what does wood mean? Wood point pain? We don't have one, you know, each thing, like the metal means this and the wood means that. No, we just have fire point is meaningful. You know, the other points, they're painful, and we will try and resolve them, but fire point pain dictates which points you use on the channel, generally speaking, which will be the metal and the water points. Water overcomes fire. Okay, and this is probably the last time you'll hear me do a lot of 5-element understandings. Water overcomes fire, and metal is the mother of water, so it helps water overcome fire. We're always, this is a principle of this treatment, we're always looking to tonify, we're never looking to sedate, with the exception of gallbladder. Okay. Generally speaking, we're looking for the weakness, we're looking for the deficiency. Okay? Always look for the deficiency rather than the excess. The excess is there because there is a weakness in the body, is the idea. Okay, if you want to translate it to TCM terms. Okay? So the main thing in palpation is just palpate. Okay? Then I start prioritizing or making up a story. Okay? What was the first injury? What's most painful in the abdomen? You know, how can I come up with an idea that explains why this person has what they have? Okay? And then does the story have a strategy? Okay? Now bear in mind the strategy is allowed to be wrong. Okay? You don't have to come up with a correct strategy right away. You're testing it out. That's the 4th step. Test out the strategy. So now I'm testing out the strategy. I'm pressing on a point that's supposed to resolve my story. And I check the abdomen. And if they have a symptom like pain, I can check the pain as well. That's it. If this treatment point did a great job for everything, my story is correct. If it does nothing, or it does 10%, it's useless. It's a nice story, but it's not really, it's just not very useful. So I abandon it and I come up with a new story. I keep going between steps 3 and 4 constantly. Make up a story, test it. Tested well, go ahead and treat. Didn't test well, make up a new story. Tested well, but there's still some stuff left, come up with one more story. That will be your secondary story. Okay? So you keep making up stories and testing them. That's kind of what I do. Okay? But what it looks like I'm doing is it looks like I'm poking the abdomen. Okay? The poking of the abdomen is simply a way of ensuring that my story is correct. That's all. Like I told you, if you can do it from the pulse, if you can do it from the nails, if you can do it from the hair, if you can do it from the color of the eyes, and you can see that it's changing when you're pressing on a point, go for it. I don't care. You know, I'm just giving you some, options. Now, some things are going to have to be treated first. If somebody has a cardiac condition, you need to treat it first. Okay? You can't, again, these are things that affect the whole body. Why? Because if they have some blockage or weakness in the heart, nothing is going to move. So it's a primary thing to treat, but when we get to cardiac and talk about that, you'll see that if they have edema, for example, I have to treat that first. If they have a very weak pulse, I have to treat that first. But as a rule, cardiac conditions get treated first. Autonomic nervous system conditions get treated first because, well, if the nervous system is like whacked, that affects every cell in the body also, every system. So people with autonomic nervous system disorders have to be treated. That's a priority. Blood pressure disorder, which I take as, to some extent, it's a little bit of a subcategory of autonomic nervous system. Not always. But if you look at systolic and diastolic blood pressure, okay, the systolic is a little bit like equivalent to the sympathetic. It reflects a little bit the sympathetic nervous system, and the diastolic reflects a little bit the parasympathetic. So if in the blood pressure they're not coordinated, if the difference between the two is not 40 or close to 40, okay, someone with a blood pressure of 120/60 is not by any standard considered not good blood pressure. It's not high, it's not low. Well, let's make it 65 so it's really clear. Okay. 65 is not low blood pressure, especially if they're not suffering from orthostatic blood pressure problems, vertigo or something. So nobody's going to tell them you've got bad blood pressure. But the number, it's 55 between. It's too high. It's not correct. So something in the body doesn't adjust. Okay? So blood pressure problems are something that you need to treat. Autoimmune disorders, diabetes, and thyroid conditions. These are things that affect everywhere in your body. You cannot ignore them. You just can't. Okay? And then there are some palpatory findings that take priority. And those are the adrenals, which will reflect just below kidney 16. We call 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. The SCM, which reflects the autonomic nervous system, because the vagus nerve goes through the SCM. The vagus nerve is a parasympathetic nerve that feeds all the organs. Okay? So if you don't get parasympathetic feedback into the abdomen, into the organs, you're going to be screwed up. So you need to release the SCM. Cervicals and occiput are a priority. The cervicals because C4 controls the diaphragm, the phrenic nerve, so again it controls the nervous system, and because the occiput reflects. First of all, it's a connection between this whole area is a connection between the brain and the body. Okay, so you need to make sure that this connection exists. Otherwise, you're in a little bit of trouble. Okay? And then. The occiput reflects specifically autonomic nervous system problems and hormonal problems. So again, hormonal problems affect the whole body. Somebody has a pulse when you touch your 9, actually touch anywhere in the abdomen, and they have a pulse, don't worry about it, it appears many, many times again and again. You don't have to write it, trust me, you'll see it again. If you feel the pulse when you touch the abdomen, it's a problem. You should not feel the pulse in a healthy abdomen. Unfortunately, in today's world, over 50% of your patients are going to show a pulse in the abdomen. that needs to be treated, that takes priority. That's a weakness of the mesenteric tissue. So that means your organs are not having the correct container, defense shield around them. Okay? If they have a fire point pain, that does not mean I check all 12 meridians on both sides fire points. But you intelligently choose what you're going to do. But fire point does take some precedence, specifically in the kidney and the pericardial channels. That's where it's really important. And stomach chi, there's two ways to decide on stomach chi. That was his question at the beginning. The one is from the pulse, a pulse that just moves up into your fingers. This is the pulse here. It just moves up into my fingers. It doesn't flow forward. There's no wave to the pulse. That's a stomach chi pulse. By the way, there are lots of pulses that wave backwards. I know it sounds absurd, because the pulse is supposed to move towards the front when you pulse early. There are people whose pulse actually moves this way. It's quite common. Okay? So, I'm talking about a pulse that just moves up and down, up and down. There's no wave to it. Okay? That's a stomach chi pulse, but because that takes time to sort of get a resonance with that pulse, because there's no TCM description for it, so you weren't told, well, weak pulse, strong pulse, blah, blah, blah. It's not one of those. Then you have the bumps along the stomach channel. We used to say below stomach 40, but it can be some, elsewhere. But our stomach channel is directly next to the bone. This is the first stomach line. I know you guys take stomach 36 often here, and that's fine if you want to do that. But don't take the stomach chi basically a finger or two away from the bone. It's on the bone are those bumps. Okay, and I guarantee that we will have somebody with bumps here. It's just impossible that, with 5 people, I guarantee you one has. Okay, so those bumps are very important. They need to be treated. And then, if you have inguinal tension or inner thigh tension, it's very important to treat. Why? Because your circulation into the organs does not come from the heart. Okay, the circulation goes this way, from the lungs. Okay, we'll start with the lungs. The venous return comes to the lungs to give up carbon dioxide and picks up new oxygen from the lungs, goes into the heart, and now this oxygenated blood goes up to the arms and the brain and goes down through the aorta, splits into the legs, okay, comes up through venous returns, comes back through the inner thighs and the inguinal. Now it comes to the organs and feeds the organs, because what it's going to do now is it's going to pick up food from the small intestine, come through the portal vein, which comes more from the left, to the liver. Okay? The liver is going to work on that enzymatically and detoxify it. Now it comes to the lungs, gives up the waste, picks up the oxygen. Now you have blood that's oxygenated and has food substance. Okay? So here is what's going on. The blood supply to the organs is coming through here and through here. If you have blockages here, how can you expect the abdomen to get better if this is tight? Okay, so it's important to resolve it. This is going to be especially important for gynecological cases. Okay? And you have equivalents in the back for it. You have your piriformis, your sacroiliac ligaments also that are kind of, can be blockages for, because your main plexus, your parasympathetic plexus for the lower is, just behind the, just in front of the liao points, okay, in front of the sacrum. Okay, it's your parasympathetic plexus for all your gynecological issues. That's why the liao points are so important for gynecology. Well, we'll talk about liao. So, all right. So I think what I'd like to do is, rather than start on protocols, I would rather,
Avi?
Yes.
Christine has a question.
Yes.
Sorry,
Thank you.
You don't want to answer this now.
No, I'm
But we're talking about inherited conditions and being at birth. And so let's say you have a patient that comes very regularly, they have a chronic condition, or they like maintenance.
and like their parents had diabetes, and so you treat diabetic type points, sugar points and all that. And then they kind of stop clearing things, right? Like do you go back to it? You know what I mean? Like you kind of cleared that, cleared it, and then, but then like eventually do you ever clear it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. No, I know what you're saying. It's a very hard question to answer, even, when you have, even when you have patients that have been coming, on, off, whatever, or totally on, whatever, for 20 years. You have no idea if you really cleared it until the day they die. Hopefully they die after you, because if you did a good job of them, maybe, So it's impossible to know, but yes, it's quite possible to clear the abdomen, but still use it. So, okay. First time the patient comes is actually the most important time the patient comes is the second time, because that's when you know if you did a good job, and if not, you have to change it. If at that point you confirmed, once you've come up with a strategy that's confirmed, that solves the problems, you will always probably treat them that way, or at least a shorter version of it maybe, but you will keep the essence of that, because that is the main weakness until they come back and there's another weakness that's really significant. So if they come back and say, and by the way, I had a major concussion, okay, they're not going to accumulate another, they were diagnosed with thyroid problem. Suddenly it started. But it's rare that people are suddenly diagnosed with thyroid without a medical history in the family, so you should have probably known about it, you didn't know it's likely to happen, but you may have been treating already. So autoimmune is not like that. So they may come up when suddenly they're autoimmune. Okay? But generally speaking, whatever the weakness was, in a chronic type patient, in a serious type patient, is going to stay always a big component of their treatment, even though you may shorten the protocol for it.
But only if it continues to still work.
Well, listen, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. Yeah, then you abandon
But
it.
even if it worked for a while, let's say they were like, maybe they have thyroid because they grew up next to the farm and they were exposed to lots of pesticides, right? And then you clear their liver and their thyroid, you know what I mean? And then later, they can keep checking it, but if it doesn't apply to what's going on,
The question is,
clear.
if it doesn't apply, okay, so that question has two flavors to it, for the way I'm viewing it. It doesn't apply in the sense I'm no longer finding in the body, but whatever you are finding, say you were treating them, let's say, your example, you were treating kidney 9, large intestine 15, let's say, okay? So, which is our detox treatment. Okay? You don't have to memorize everything, it's all in the handouts, in some manner or another. Handouts on the web, they're not real handouts, they're webouts. It's a new term. So kidney 9, large intestine 15 was a very important, that was your true root for this person. Okay? There's a chance what you cleared it out, they're happy, everything is wonderful in their life, they come back 5 years later and they say, oh Christine, I twisted my ankle. There's a very good chance that large intestine 15 and kidney 9 are going to play a role. They're not going to solve a twisted ankle, but they will add. Now, they may no longer show the liver, they may no longer show stomach lining area, yes. I understand, but because you happen to know that they have this in the history and it used to be very helpful for them, chances are you will do it again. But now there'll be other things. This might be a supportive as opposed to a main. Now, if it's a patient that you're treating, the symptoms have not disappeared yet, but the abdomen no longer shows. Yes, and then you can say to yourself, why are the symptoms not disappearing? I'm not happy with my progress, or their progress. And then, there's mine, it's all about me. So, there are patients who will come to you forever, even though there's no progress. So it is about my progress to some extent, in terms of judgment, nothing to do with my ego. But if you believe, the thing is now, is my kidney 9, large intestine 15 clearing, not liver or stomach 9, are they clearing the whole abdomen? What are they doing? And then if the answer is, they're really not doing anything, They're not solving the symptom, they're not supporting anything, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, let them go. And and the theory about why maybe you cleared it, maybe it was less important, maybe at that time it appeared like the most important, but actually there's something else that's more important. So yeah, we have to be constantly flexible. So on the one hand, after the second treatment, you don't have to palpate the whole abdomen and do the whole diagnosis again and again and again. That's kind of a little bit of a waste of time. I recommend you do it, but you don't have to. Okay, if you've got a strategy. But the moment that you need to start changing strategy, the patient is changed. You need to rethink. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that answer? So, let's run quickly just so that we have a common language even though we have no idea how to treat. So you've supposedly seen the abdominal map. Okay, so this is if you haven't seen the handout or something, this is where you may want to take notes, although it exists all over the place. I start with left spleen line, like spleen 14 area, left side. Okay, so they know what my fingers feel like. Because most patients come in and you poke on the abdomen, you have no idea how they're going to react. And they don't know how they'll react. They never felt your fingers. They don't know if it's weird or not weird or painful. I mean, they don't know. So you want to give them a baseline. Okay, left spleen 14 area. Okay. Now, this will not be true for someone with ulcerative colitis or problems with a descending colon. Okay? Because they have something wrong around spleen 14. That's not going to be a good baseline. Okay, so you didn't have a baseline, no problem, keep moving. Okay. The next finding now, this is going to be problematic because you'll see in some of the way other people teach it in the books, etc. This is considered like a major finding, a primary finding, but I do it for a simile of convenience. Left stomach 26, 27, we call oketsu. Oketsu means non-physiological blood. You can translate it to the word stagnant blood, but that's not, stagnant blood for most people implies Taoren Honghua. That is not the right connotation. Stagnant blood for us means that the liver, which holds a lot of blood, okay, the blood is sluggish. Okay, that's what it means, that the blood is just moving slowly. It's not there's a vitality missing in the blood. Because the portal vein comes from the left to the right, goes into the liver is not accepting the blood in as good a rate as it could because of the blood is creeping along kind of thing, piling up on top of, then it's going to show on the left side. Okay? It's not exactly a liver diagnosis. It relates to the quality of the blood. It used to be an extremely common finding. Okay, and it used to be a finding that if you it treated lots of other things in the abdomen. That was 20 years ago. Things have changed. And I'll talk about why things changed in my opinion. Okay, and what to look for next. Right stomach 26, 27 is either lung reflex, immune reflex, digestion reflex, pelvic shift, meaning the pelvis is up. Okay, or something in the kidney's ability to renew things. The kidney is the organ that renews. Okay, from the winter comes the spring, sort of thing. Sorry, I thought it was my last 5-element thing, and apparently this one came up. Okay, and that's actually an extremely common finding nowadays. It was an extremely rare finding 20 years ago. Okay, so you see that things shift. Okay. Then we check just below kidney 16. So if Ren 9 is 12 o'clock and Ren 7 is 6 o'clock, like you have a clock here, and kidney 16 is 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, just below is 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Okay? That's the only place where it's exact. Everything else, I can't argue with you. Is the stomach channel slightly closer to the Ren, slightly more to the spleen? I don't care. Is yours, you see, I put it as stomach 26, 27. Okay, so it's not exactly 1 sun below the level of the navel, and it's not exactly 2, it's somewhere in the area. There is an area. But in the case of 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it's pretty exact. Okay?
And that we call adrenal reflex. Okay, weak adrenals. Okay. Then if you have REN9, you have two kinds of REN9s. Okay, you have one REN9 but two findings on REN9. One is just pressure pain. Okay, that we tend to call sadness reflex. Okay, don't worry if it's really sad. It could be worry, it could be anxiety. It could, we have anxieties REN17, worries REN15, and sadness is REN9. It's a nice way to dogmatize it and give it some numbers and whatever, but as you know, anxiety and worry, like what exactly is the difference? Now, sadness is definitely different, but you have to understand that the Japanese have a sort of like a whole box for, general neuritis sort of thing, general problem, they're just like mentally not fully together. So that's what that line really suggests. But you also, the big finding that you find nowadays is REN9 pulse. Okay, now we call it REN9, but the pulse you actually feel the moment you touch a ketsu area, you're already feeling the pulse. Okay, it's not exactly REN9. You're feeling it especially on the left below the navel. You can feel it on the REN line all the way to REN15 sometimes. If you're feeling it all the way to REN15, not a good sign. That could be an aneurysm, even if you're feeling it all the way to REN12. Okay, you don't want it moving, further up. But that vulnerability in the abdomen, it basically says that the abdominal tissue doesn't have good integrity. Okay, so we call that a weak dantian. Okay, it's extremely common in today's world. Yes.
So if you feel it at left stomach 26, 27, you take that as a REN9 pulse finding and not a no-ketsu finding?
It's not a ketsu. No. If they also have pressure pain there, you can claim that it's ketsu. But since you know me, and you know that even if they have ketsu to me has become a little bit like stomach 36. Like, okay, that's cute. Can I get away without dealing with it? If I have to, I will. But yeah, if you're feeling it, say at 4 o'clock you're feeling it. But don't forget that 4 o'clock in REN9, in other words, adrenal and REN9 pulse are correlated. And on the back, REN9 pulse is treated with UB52. It is high, they're totally connected. So the 4 o'clock is not a good example, but yeah, the left stomach 26, I will treat REN9 first. If then I still have a ketsu as pressure pain, I will deal with a ketsu. Okay. But REN9 pulse, in my opinion, is a more important finding than ketsu. That would not have been true 20 years ago. Or though isn't true, maybe it was true, but that was not my thinking 20 years ago.
One more question.
Yeah.
Do you correlate REN9 pulse with sympathetic?
Can be, absolutely, yeah.
So sometimes they can be a reflection, but not always.
Not always, but you have okay. I personally don't like the term sympathetic dominance because I think
Whole last couple of years, all of that sympathetic dominance.
yes, I understand, but you know why? Because it's easier to call it sympathetic dominance, even though in my opinion, it's a it's not as precise. In my opinion, you should just call it autonomic nervous system disorder. It's not always sympathetic dominance. It really isn't. I owe you some things on that. In my opinion, these are what we used to call marrow points. Because I was using them a long time ago as marrow, and then I was realizing, wait a second, I think, this has to do with this marrow ideology. Because I haven't seen the actual explanation except the total Western. What is it, the dorsolateral blah 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 prefrontal cortex or something? No, which is fair, but it's just interesting, that you can make different things in it. But so REN9 pulse, then you have REN12. So I'm just giving you a map. REN12 is basically is a weak stomach. Now, weak stomach is very important for a number of reasons. Of course, in TCM, the stomach is so important, etc., etc. But also, REN12 is two other things besides just, yes, it's the mood point of the stomach, but it's also what? It's the meeting point of all the full organs, right? Okay. And it's also the beginning of the meridians, because the lung meridian starts
at REN 12 moves up and out to the upper. So it has like real great significance. Now the thing about it being the meeting point of all the food organs is the stomach, so Kiiko calls it weak rugae. Rugae is the kind of tissue, a sac is made out of rugae tissue in some cases. If you want to look at it externally, look at someone's scrotum. Okay, it's tissue that slides over itself. Okay, that's why it's able to expand. It expands by doing this. Okay, and it contracts by sliding over itself. The bladder, the stomach, the uterus, the cervix, these are all tissue that have that style tissue. That is why REN 12, these are full organs. Okay? That's why the stomach represents all the sacs, all the foods. Okay? So REN 12 is a very important finding, or can be a very important finding. Okay? You want to make sure, because without REN 12, if REN 12 has pressure pain on it, chances are that you may want to call postnatal chi has a problem. If postnatal chi has a problem, well, everything's going to have a problem. So it's a primary finding. Okay? So then you have stomach 21. Stomach 21 reflects either on the, this is my left side. On the left side it represents the stomach. On the right side it represents the duodenum. So it represents ulcers. It can also be part of the zong qi presentation. Okay, pectoral qi. So postnatal qi presentation. And some people have a beam across from stomach 21 through REN 12 to the other side, stomach 20. You see like a bump, like a little hill, like an elongated hill going this way. That we call weak pancreas. These are people that will have digestive problems in the sense of not enough enzymes. Okay? Now they may actually have pancreatitis, but they have a weak pancreas. Okay? Then we have REN 15. We talked about that as worry reflex, but if you press it up and to the left, we call that cardiac reflex. Okay? Then we have REN 17, that is we call anxiety reflex, but also part of cardiac presentation possibly. Then if you press REN 17 really hard, do not do that unless there's a reason to do that. That we call esophageal reflex. In other words, there's no reason to test someone's esophagus, you know, just for the sake of it. You know, if they don't have acid reflux, if they don't have a problem, that's not part of the presentation, don't bother. Okay? Right side under the ribs, you press under the ribs is liver. Also liver 14 can be liver. I compare it to the left side. In this country, for the most part, the left side, liver 14 or under the ribs, are insignificant because very few people here have malaria, chikungunya, dengue fever, stuff of that nature. If you're working in a tropical country, you can't assume that. Okay? So what happens is I often press the left side and the right side to give them a comparison. You can tell how deep your finger is willing to go. You can feel the resistance. So that's the liver. Then up here I check if there's lung problems. I'll check kidney on the left and the right. We call that bronchial reflex. Most people show the lungs more here than lung 1, lung 2, because the bronchia are closer in. So I'm sorry that the Chinese decided this is the lung new point, but honestly it shows a lot more here. Now, if it shows only left side, that's possibly part of cardiac presentation. But it's also possible, this is where you have to take everything sort of with a grain of salt. Left side only may say that they have the left lung shows really clearly and the right lung doesn't yet show. It's possible. You can't assume that this is a cardiac presentation quite yet. Then if somebody comes from musculoskeletal problems, I do check gallbladder 26 because this is how you twist. And that's going to pull the back and it's going to pull the legs. So knee pain, back pain, things like in shoulder problems, I always check gallbladder 26. If you have a tight gallbladder 26, I can't raise my arm because my pectoralis is tight. My shirt shows it very clearly. If I release gallbladder 26, my arm can go up. That's a great trick for, when people can't raise their arm. It's not the only one, You know, you may need more, but it's a good thing to look at. For women, I check kidney 13, which reflects the uterus, and stomach 28, which reflects the ovaries. Okay. Now, notice that the uterus is on the kidney channel. It's because the kidney channel is further in and the uterus is further in. But you treat the uterus with either spleen or liver points because the uterus has to do with blood. And the ovaries get treated, even though they're on the stomach channel, they get treated with kidney points because they're they're an endocrine, function. So it's just bear that in mind. Then I check the SCM because it controls the vagus nerve. I check the scalenes between the two heads of the SCM, okay, because it controls blood supply to the brain as well as to the shoulder and the arm, okay, and it's a breathing muscle, so it is going to be related to the autonomic nervous system. I check stomach 9 fairly carefully because lots of women have thyroid problems. It's very, very common. Then in the back, I check the cervicals. So we say that C3 relates to the phrenic nerve. C4, C5 relate to the thyroid. And the occiput relates to the autonomic nervous system and the adrenals. The mastoid relates to autonomic nerve, to autoimmune disorders, as well as what we call deep tissue pain, and possibly to ears as well. And Sanjar 16 area, so that's behind the SCM, and I'm doing it with the patient lying face up, so I'm pressing it towards the nose, is related to immunity, it's lymph area.
Which one?
Sanjar 16. Okay, that's a reflection. All right, so now you have your map, the class is over, right?